I had an interesting conversation with Jenilyn, my wife, and I think it ties in with some of the psychology of marriage over time. And the first thing was just noticing, I've got a broken elbow, and so I need help getting out of bed at times. Just the weight and the logistics, etc. Need assistance with things that I normally wouldn't need assistance with. And was noticing that she is not enthusiastic about supporting that, which brought up a sense of grief because she's 25 years old now. When we married at her 23, that part of her, that 23-year-old, was incredibly enthusiastic. And there's also, in looking at the balance and looking at the nature of the relationship over time, one of the things that she said repeatedly in the 22 to 23 year range as we kind of led up to the marriage is she wanted to take care of me as I'm older, and she wanted to help in various ways. And this is something that I'm presuming the 23-year-old really felt. But now she's 25, and there's a different dynamic and psychology, etc. And so between 23 and 25, her life skills are up 5,500%. Her well-being is up, we have to check on it from time to time, but anywhere from 250 to 600% on a given day over, the point of our meeting. And so, what's been happening for me is I've been learning to love and appreciate and grow into the marriage that way, just learning to see and understand and feel grateful for her presence and things like that. And the elbow is, of course, a setback in that. But, I'm in pain. It's 3 a.m. I need help to remove sweaty clothes that feel cold and damp and put on dry clothes because I'm sweating a lot in the healing process. And I'm feeling excluded. I'm feeling mildly resented by the 25-year-old. And of course, I'm remembering the promises and the things of the 23-year-old. And I've kept my side of the contract. In every marriage, there's the love, there's the care, there's the attraction, and there's the contract. You will do this, and I will do this. And if you don't think there's a contract, try not doing anything at all to help in any way whatsoever your partner, logistically or otherwise, and notice whether or not they go along with that. If you're paying money for the relationship, stop paying money at all for the relationship. If you're cleaning house when you do cooking or half the time, delete the cleaning. If you're keeping yourself, presentable in X, Y, and Z, then don't do that. and see how long the natural love, attraction, etc. carries the relationship on its own in an asymmetrical pattern in which your partner is left to do all of the various chores responsible for house and relationship care, and you do none of them. And so there is a relationship contract, and the healthiest contracts are spelled out as opposed to build up, perceived asymmetry often on both sides. They think they're doing more, you think you're doing more, nobody talks about it. The friction builds up, and after 5 years, they explode because they've been doing more in their mind that entire time. And you have a fit because in your mind, you should be thanked for the fact that you've done more that entire 5-year period because you haven't, integrated and sorted out what is and is not to be expected in this, what is the relationship contract. So we have a relationship contract, and it involves her doing everything she possibly can to grow life skills to a point with a goal that we have a symmetrical relationship at some point. It doesn't have to be this year, it doesn't have to be next year, but that every month we're building, that's why I say she's, had a 5,500% increase in life skills, because that increases competency, that increases the ability to share the logistical load of a long-term relationship, so that she can contribute money to the relationship, she can contribute a variety of skills to the relationship. And this is somewhat more relevant in terms of being a multicultural relationship, her being Filipino, there being a variety of skills since we're living in the U.S., in logistics that she just would not be exposed to as a Filipina. And so that process moving along. But we had a conversation last night because I felt hurt, that I'm needing help and she's giving it, but I don't feel like she's willingly present. I feel more like a sulking teenager, kind of energy. And this brings in a whole host of different things. So first of all, one of the things that it brings up is that the marriage was a wonderful thing for her 23-year-old, meaning her 23-year-old didn't sulk all that much, was very involved with giving and investing in the relationship, etc. And so we could say that for the 23-year-old, the marriage was a great deal in terms of the contract of the marriage. That that she would have a caring and attentive mentor and teacher that would show her a whole host of different things and open up doorways in areas that are really important to a 23-year-old, that the marriage is, providing a great opportunity for her 23-year-old. But of course, from that angle, less so as a 25-year-old, because she's already received a lot of that benefit, whether it's the visa, whether it's the, whether it's the learning this skill, whether it's saving money, so she's now got more money than she's ever had in her life, more opportunity, more skills than she's ever had in her life, more confidence as she's treated well, a cultural shift. There is overpopulation in the Philippines and a different attitude towards elders. So just by coming to the U.S., a younger, attractive woman goes up in social status significantly. And so she's experiencing it initially to her surprise, and but that's sinking in, that that she is treated well in this culture, and that she will be treated well married to me or not married to me. So there's an equation of of cost benefit that is ongoing. That's a different equation for a 25-year-old than a 23-year-old. So more self-confidence, etc. And so one of the things we talked about was the fact that it could be that by 26 she will be less interested in the marriage than she is at 25. In which case we need to get a divorce. Not because we don't like each other, etc. But if that's the growing trend, then obviously I am no longer in relationship with her 23-year-old as actively. Her 23-year-old was adoring, excited, alive, grateful, helpful, excited and motivated to learn, etc. And that was the woman that I married. And life has an environment and time both change the relationship. So, part of the things that I explained to her is, your 25-year-old may not have decided to get married. Meaning, in the exact situation that you're in now, your 25-year-old may not have pursued a marriage with me in these particular logistics, the way your 23-year-old did. Because your 23-year-old was in a different set of logistics than your 25-year-old, had a different set of options, a different set of skills, a different set of needs. Now, I've met my side of the contract in terms of facilitating that 5,500% increase in life skill and the 250 to 700% increase in personal well-being. And as a general rule, I'm learning and growing to love more on a monthly basis than before. And as a general rule, I am protecting and providing at a higher standard of living, month by month. And her life skills are still growing. And so her survival has gone up. Her security of survival has gone way up. Her sense of love and belonging has gone up a good, 30%. Her sense of self-esteem and the coaching and healing and therapy work that we've done, up significantly and growing. Her sense of skills and ability, and I'm referencing Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are going up. And I'm very happy with her presence, with her assistance, with her companionship, and our sexuality is stable to growing in all of this, with me being older, her having a higher sexual drive than myself. And the power dynamic we're shifting very deliberately by, it's important to me that she have independence, so that she can think and decide freely. And so, we've structured an environment where she can do work and save money. We've also structured an ending agreement, meaning that she can end the relationship if at any point she feels that she would be happier out of the relationship rather than in the relationship, and that ending agreement will leave her stronger than when she arrived. The financial settlement providing for her future, the logistical, settlement giving her freedom of where she wants to live, and etc. And so there's the chance for her to grow outside the relationship if at any point, in the next X number of years she wants to. And so one of the things that I think that I want to highlight in this video as being an important consideration in any marriage is that, in this case, her 23-year-old really wanted to marry me. My sense is that her 23-year-old wanted to marry me more by about, 40 or 50% than her 23. So that in 2 years, so one of the things one can see is that one has a hierarchy of human needs: survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, that when survival and security is not abundant, and a marriage increases survival and security, there will be a rush of energy up to the point where there is security. But once that security is met, then that pull towards marriage is not as strong. And this is true, in male or female dynamic, though traditionally in most of our world's cultures it has been the male with the protect, provide role, and the female with the nurture and presence role. And that actually feels, I would much rather have a nurturing presence in my life than I would have someone able to bring in as much money as I'm able to bring in if I have to choose. And it seems like I have to choose because I have not met a Western woman with a nurture-presence ratio that's really high and a high-quality time, at 4 to 12 hours a day of quality time together, and a high income. I've had a few girlfriends that have been rich and had quality time, but they've been incredibly high on the sociopathic continuum and low on the empathic continuum, sociopathic, empathic continuum. So low on empathy, high on sociopathic, lack of empathy behavior. And I've met people that could nurture and not provide much income, but were working and couldn't provide quality time. And then I've met people that could nurture and had no income, but who also wanted to maintain a relationship contract where the male would provide everything and and they would be equal partners in all the other areas as well. So that the only area that would be unequal would be the income, which is a huge thing. And so I've met women who, it's like we have to decide equally on where we go on vacation. We have to decide equally on how we each spend our time. We have to decide equally on who we go to see as a therapist. We have to decide equally what car we're going to buy. We have to decide all this stuff equally. And I have to go and do my important things and you have to pay for them. And so everything has to be equal, except my entire survival and security has got to be provided by you. And this has always felt really shitty because it's a tremendous blind spot, to say that, women are equal. But for some reason, despite being equal in every way, you should provide this and this and this. Why? Because you're a male. It's very tired. It's exhausting as an idea, let alone a reality. And so I've, found that to be unworkable. It's not a contract of relationship I'm comfortable signing. And so we've got a dynamic that's, I think, really ideal because you do bond biologically with the person you spend the most time with. And this is a really important reality. I bond quickly with a lot of people. And, my wife prefers monogamy. And so the best way to ensure a healthy mutual monogamy is if she's around anytime that I want to be close to someone and that she enjoys being close. Because if she doesn't want to be close, but I want to be close, and the only consequence of monogamy is that I am deprived on a regular basis because of the discrepancy of my desire for closeness and her desire of closeness, it's just a contract of deprivation, because there's plenty of women who enjoy spending time with me. And if the only reason I'm not spending time with them is because my wife doesn't like it, but she doesn't like to use the time. This is a principle that I've brought into the marriage and said, look, you can be as jealous and possessive as you want. Fine. If you use the resource you are jealous and possessive about. It's kind of like the kid that whatever toy the guest picks, he wants that toy. It's like, if you're going to play with that toy, that you really want this toy, fine, go play with it. Okay, you can have it. It's your toy. Play with it. But if you've got 100 toys and you can only play with one, as soon as your guest picks another toy, now you don't actually want to play with any of them. You just want to make sure that your guest does not enjoy themselves. That is the primary objective of the game, is to deprive your guest of an abundance of resources to make sure they feel unwelcome and miserable and deprived, because you want to punish them and not let them have any toys. That's not acceptable. And so, so in the contract around monogamy and sexuality, I've made it clear that anytime she needs me, wants me, and wants to participate in a reciprocal dynamic together of some kind, she has first dibs. But if she does not, because I was running into a variety of things. Oh, I'm too tired to go for a walk. Oh, I'm too tired to do this. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Oh, I don't want to do this. It's like, fine, I will go for a walk with someone else. I will, and it'll probably be a woman, because in our culture, men don't go for walks as much. And yes, there's a 30% chance I'll be attracted to that woman and will form, an energy bond. No, I will not break I will not cross the sexual boundary, but there'll be that energy and that feeling. And if you don't like that, then get out of bed and come for a walk. You have to decide between investing in your partner's well-being if you want to be married and have kind of a monopoly hold on something. Monopoly holds are not good in free market economies unless your monopoly supplier. You see, if you have a supplier that says, I want to be your only, let's sign a contract that says I'm the only one you can buy windshields from. Well, you've been supplying windshields reliably, you get them here on time. So the stipulation has to be, if you want a monopoly agreement, you have to remain at this price point, at this number of windshields within this time period, etc. And if you do that, frankly, we don't even need a monopoly agreement. We don't need, and this is what I've found with women as well, that because I default healthily towards monogamy, I always value depth over variety. And so if I'm growing deeper with one woman who is available for depth, for quality time, I am always loyal to that woman. It's a healthy impulse from my perspective because I value depth over variety. However, I will end a relationship that is, quote, monogamous if the person who needs monogamy will not allow the flow of energy that is necessary to entertain the different needs present on both sides, and this goes both ways. It's like, if I'm not meeting your needs and you've got tons of people who can meet them, why exactly are we married? Why exactly are your needs not being met, which I have no intention of meeting, which I'm not meeting, and which you could easily get met with dozens of people around you? Why are we in that dynamic? Because that doesn't seem healthy. It doesn't seem healthy in business. I mean, if you are a car manufacturer and you have a monopoly contract with someone where the entire assembly line grinds to a halt because your monopoly windshield contractor doesn't have windshields. You call them up and you say, I need windshields. And they're like, well, I don't feel like bringing you windshields today. And it's like, well, I need windshields. The whole manufacturing process is all ground to a halt. The cars are waiting for nothing but windshields. You say, okay, I'm going to go with another supplier. No, you can't go with another supplier. How dare you get windshields from another supplier? Fine, I'll stop my vacation and I'll get you your windshields. It's that kind of, a dynamic in a really healthy, mutual, caring relationship. You don't grind someone's process down. If they need someone to talk to in order to integrate their thoughts and feelings and be at their best, then you don't block people to talk to just because of your possessiveness. If they need a sense of flow and dance and engagement and romance in order to be alive and vital, and you don't like any of that, but you don't like the idea of them doing that with other people who do enjoy it and who have time while you're busy playing video games or whatever it is, it's absolutely insane. It's not love. It's insecurity, and so there needs to be a healthy challenge to these monopoly holds, and I'm very kind towards those types of feelings, but I'm also very impatient with the level of self-absorption that can go into this myopic, it doesn't matter what you need, all that matters is that you can't meet your needs with anyone else, whether I want to or not. So we have a pretty good, healthy conversation, just like we're talking here about that. But the key thing to be aware of is that the strength of the marriage is the different ages in their relationship with one another. So, over here we have, in my case, male and female. And so, we have me at 44 here. Now, I relate very well to the 23-year-old here. I went, maybe it's a plus 8. Maybe it's a plus 5 at the 25. In terms of, do I feel married? Now, when I say married, what I mean is there's a sense of beauty, a sense of truth, a sense of goodness, of transcendence, where I like that feeling. I welcome you. I appreciate you. I want to be in this dynamic with you. And I have a great relationship with the 3-year-old in my partner, who shows up from time to time, and the 4-year-old, and the 5-year-old. Little shaky, relationship with the 8-year-old. Now, these inner ages, they're like rings in a tree. And so, just like every tree, if it's a 500-year-old tree, the cambion is in the 500th ring. But the earlier ages are still there. They provide strength, they provide pattern cohesion, they provide the meat of the tree is actually its history. And so in that dynamic, the tree is still there. The 3-year-old is still there, the 5-year-old is still there, etc. And so one of the things that I want to, I guess, encourage and leave you with as an invitation around creating a healthy marriage is that, first of all, obvious, age is not as relevant as inner age, 1. 2, the longevity of the relationship is not the primary goal, I think, if you value vitality and growth and healing, etc. I mean, there have been few more rewarding relationships in my life, but obviously there's not a guarantee, that this will last, in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years. That doesn't mean it isn't a phenomenal relationship if it reaches a peak point where it goes from her being the most important person in the world for my well-being and my growth and my spiritual development, etc., to the third most important person in the world. That's not a horrible transition. That's not a problem. But what is a very important thing to understand is that, in this case, she chose me at 23. She didn't choose to be married at 25. The 25-year-old wakes up and discovers that they're in a logistical reality decided and determined by the 23-year-old and the 24-year-old. Well, the 23-year-old was when we met and started exploring, and then the 24-year-old was when we got formally married. Now she's 25. And so the 26-year-old will not have decided. The 26-year-old may learn things, may grow and evolve in a way where they value different things. The 26-year-old doesn't want to keep the promises of the 23-year-old. But the 44-year-old or the 45 or the 46-year-old doesn't want the relationship under a completely new contract that has not been formally renegotiated. It's just been resentfully renegotiated. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. It takes too much work. And say, well, I don't want to do this and 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 this in the contract of the relationship with you not doing this. So maybe we dissolve the contract, tear it up, and say, okay, off to the drawing boards again to create the best relationship of our life that we can create. And so this is very much the politics of relationship. And for the inner 5-year-old, of course, this is very insecure and very scary thing to talk about. For the politically correct romantic, this is taboo to discuss any of this. These codes are going on constantly in people's minds, but you can't possibly, sit down and express them. And they will continue to grow. Meaning my 46-year-old didn't agree to be married to her 26-year-old as her 26-year-old, emerges, which is different than the 23-year-old. So there's a continual process. Are we married? Are we one? Are we of an accord? Are we bringing the joy, the growing, the love, the beauty, the truth, and goodness to one another in such a way that who we are today would make the marriage agreement, and then who we are today, and then who we are today. Because if that stays constant, meaning if we continue to grow and evolve as a couple, then it's a very, very strong marriage. Meaning if the 23-year-old and the 43-year-old both made a deal that works for them, and then the 24-year-old and the 44-year-old, makes a deal that works for them, and then the 25-year-old and the 44-year-old or 45-year-old makes a deal that's good for them, and you keep growing that, you have the challenge of reinventing and recreating oneself, one's marriage, one's life in a way that is beautiful, that is incredibly robust. But it takes two to say yes. It takes two to come together. It takes one to violate, to say no, to break the contract, which is the fragility of every synergy. You take one part away, you remove the battery from the flashlight, there is no light. You remove the wire from the flashlight, there's no light. You remove the bulb, there's no light. The fragility of synergy is that it takes many, in this case two, to say yes and one to say no. The power of synergy is the fact that, there's no way, there is no, the odds are less than 1 in 5,000 that another probability field would have encountered Jen, that would have seen her life skills going up 5,005%, her safety and security going up, over 1,000%, her income going up over 1,000%, a whole variety of things going up. Those are good for her well-being, and so the contract is very strong for the 23-year-old and the 42, 43-year-old. It's a little weaker today. But here's the beautiful thing. There's all kinds of taboos in our culture, where we would never talk about something so useful as this. But one of the things I love about Jen is we can and we do talk about this. We did a lot of this kind of drawing and discussion prior to getting married, because I wanted her to understand all the problems with the age gap, with the power gap, the risks to her, the risks to me. The biggest risk for me being that I fall deeper in love over time with a woman who is more and more likely to separate because of, perhaps her need to go through the antipathy cycle of maturing. The child is the sympathy, the yes, the receptivity. The adolescent is the antipathy, I want nothing to do with you. And then the adult is the synthesis, the yes and the no, and can form a real partnership. And so there's a dynamic, culture that produces immature human beings, myself included, that, picking and working with someone younger, they may need to go through an antipathy period that I don't know how to deal with as, a mature lover. And on the flip side, I've protected her from most of her greatest vulnerabilities, which are in the imbalance of power, by ensuring that she rapidly rise in authority and power in the relationship. And I feel grief. I feel sad. I feel sad today that, the 23-year-old loved month series. So every month, the 23-year-old would celebrate this relationship, and it's been surviving another month. 25-year-old barely remembered a card on our anniversary, and so there's a deterioration. There's a hurt, a sadness around that, because I married the 23-year-old, and so there's a tension, and I think it's a really healthy conversation. I found it brought me closer to Jen last night at 3 a.m. to talk this through. Say, look, it's not your fault if your 25-year-old isn't as into me as your 23-year-old was. She's in a different reality, a different context, etc., etc. It's not her job to carry through the promise of the 23-year-old. But it's my job to advocate, for both of us, to track and be aware, you're not seeming as into you or as into us or as into me as you were 2 years ago. And if that's not, if we're not growing together, we're dying. If we're dying, it's important to grieve and let go, because what love looks like to me is seeing that you are continually growing. You are becoming your best self. obviously, that if you're with me, I have to be providing a way that you become your best self through the relationship. Now, I think I can be doing that, but it takes a certain amount of discipline and seizing an opportunity. And similarly, I have to be able to feel like I'm becoming my best self by choosing this monopoly contract with you. That I'm able to be understood, I'm able to feel loved, cared about, in this contract with you. And I've got to feel that today, I've got to feel it tomorrow, and it hurts to notice we're down 20% over a few months ago. And what's that about? And, is this a time to revisit the ending contract that we wrote together? If I end, I will end in this way. If she ends, she will end in this way. And we will both be left stronger and be, free to co-create a stronger relationship. That's sad because we have such a good relationship. Relative, I've spent time with 100 lovers. This is a phenomenal relationship on physically, emotionally, mentally, logistically, financially, spiritually. It's a phenomenal relationship. Nonetheless, we have the ability to grow that relationship, to make it better and better every month. And what does it take for each of us to do that? Because we've got to have the will, or in my view, when a relationship starts dying and neither person cares enough about the relationship and about oneself to revitalize the relationship, a death in the structure of the monopoly, etc., is better than a death of the soul, than the death of hope, than the death of possibility in the relationship, because there's a lot of growth that takes place in an ending. And there's a lot of growth that takes place in searching. And there's a lot of growth that takes place in the beginning, in a new beginning. And growing life, expansion, awareness, consciousness, overcoming the hedonic adaptation program that is constantly taking what is fabulous and familiar and downgrading it into a depressing mediocrity simply by saying, well, I felt this before, I'm not going to pay attention to this. That's part of the challenge. And part of my challenge in responding to this is to feel, is to talk, and in a video like this, not only to support other people in their marriage, but to bring awareness. Because while I talked with Jen for 20 minutes around this, she started to get tired listening to all the Venn diagrams and this and that and the other. But my camera doesn't, and so there's a way that I can deepen and integrate at this moment in time in a way that I cannot, with the attention span of my wife. So I hope this helps you, if it benefits you in your marriage in some way. And if you can see how it helps you in growing and forming a new relationship, I'd love to hear from you.